You got me wanting to want you, but I don't think you like me like that.
Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. It's Horchata Mamita back for another video. Today's topic is finding yourself again, rediscovering like who you are at your core and making space and like making peace with your new identity. A lot of times it could feel like there's like internal conflict just in terms of who am I to my core versus like who am I becoming and how can we remedy that. And so I think that's just like a very important thing to like constantly think about and like reevaluate, like especially again being in your 20s. I cannot stress this enough. Like you're constantly questioning yourself, you're constantly like defining and redefining yourself, and so we need to talk about it. Like let's talk about it. So there's no right way to do it, right? And that's with anything that I've talked about. If there's any takeaway that you can grab from any of my content, is there is no right way to do life, okay? To do anything. So there is no correct way to do anything that I'm talking about. This is obviously based on the person. This is based on your circumstances, based on your priorities, your values, like the way that you've made sense of your own experiences. Like that's very specific to you. But I've broken this down into a few buckets. So I think the first thing that is really important and just like finding yourself again is asking yourself, what are some things that make you feel at peace and essentially like liberated, right? All these things that I'm gonna bring up, I will say like it's helpful to just like reflect on and just like sit with, because even for me, like when I was thinking about it, I was like, oh wow, like this is not like a clear-cut answer. It can be elaborate. So anyway, spending time to think about these things is very helpful, I think, in my experience. Going back to like what I've said before, everything is energy, right? Like I do believe everything is energy. Everything's an exchange of energy. And I feel like something either drains you or it uplifts you and it makes you feel lighter, right? And so asking yourself, what are those things that make you feel lighter? Mind you, as I mentioned in my last video, if you guys haven't seen, check it out above. But as I mentioned in my last video about moving in your purpose, like there are things that can be hard and still be good for you. There are things that can be uncomfortable and can still be good for you, right? I'm not saying that everything is either black or white, right? I think there's room for nuance. There are things that feel light and they might not be good for you. So just keep in mind, nothing is black and white. And I myself am trying to like break out of that paradigm of like black and white thinking, like either it's this or that. Maybe it's in between, babes. We got to leave room for that. So point is, when we're thinking about like things that either drain you or uplift you, generally, what are the things that are guaranteed to uplift you? Mind you, pros and cons, right? In consideration of the nuance, pros and cons. Because even though, for example, we're talking about things that are bad for you, but they feel light, like what are the consequences to them? Now let's weigh the consequences versus the benefits of them. You know what I'm saying? Like, and you could do the opposite for the things that feel heavy and are actually like good for you. Yes, they might feel like exhausting or very mentally challenging, but like let's weigh that against like the benefits of this thing. Like how is it helping me again become my best self or accomplish the things that I want to in life? In consideration of all of that, obviously, like generally you can then decide what overall overwhelmingly brings peace to my life. What makes me feel like lighter, you know, what adds to my day. And if anything, supplements my life, basically. And so I think asking that is really important because those things are part of what make you you. I have to keep using me as an example, obviously, because like that's what's relevant to me. But like acting, reading poetry, writing poetry, those are very important to me. Making this world more equitable, that is very important to me. And a better place, generally. Like uplifting people's stories, being empathetic to people's stories, making room for that. Like that's important to me. That also brings me peace. Like being a healer, not in the sense of like I'm solving people's problems fully, because like I know I'm just one person, but like contributing to making someone's life better. I think that is something that brings me peace. Lending an ear and lending a hand to someone around me, like that, even though, going back to the nuance, that's a good example, even though it can be challenging in some ways, like it can be emotionally taxing in some ways, And obviously you pick and choose when you want to exercise this thing, right? When you want to give, when you want to pour into other people. But like, even though there's a little bit of sacrifice in that, right? Which on the surface, it feels hard. That feels like it adds more to my plate. It takes away from it because, and this can open a different conversation, but essentially at its core, like even though physically it's adding more to me, maybe emotionally too, when it comes to my soul, like it's feeding me, it's fueling me. And so that makes my life lighter. It makes my load lighter in that sense. So yeah, just asking yourself, like, what are those things that make you feel free? What are those things that make you feel at peace? And in addition to like there being nuance in terms of what does what, like what brings you peace versus like what brings you chaos, there's also the question of like before versus now. Like what are things that used to bring me peace? Like, and to me, I think what helps me think about that is just like being a kid, right? Like what are the things that really like energized you? What are the things that you were like looking forward to? And when I think about that, I'm like the arts. Like I used to love singing and dancing, like putting on fashion shows with my sister, and we used to have a blast doing that. Like that's what we look forward to. And so those things I would say are central to my identity, just like being artistic and like expressing myself through whatever art form, fashion, dancing, singing, makeup, all those things I feel like are core to who Estella is. Also, please disregard the fact that I only have one nail right now, guys. Like, be easy on me. Halloween clearly left its mark. What hobbies did you partake in school? Like, I think that's also a good reflection of like of things that are core to your identity. Obviously, exceptions are things that you were forced to do, right? Like if my mom made me do piano, hypothetically speaking, like I never cared for it. I just did it because I wanted my mom to be happy. Like I wouldn't say that that's necessarily core to my identity, because how someone perceives me and what someone wants for me is different than what I want for myself. You know, like when it comes from your inner world versus like you're told this is what you should be doing, there's a difference there. So obviously that's an exception, but like I did soccer when I was in college. I did soccer when I was in high school. Like those are things that bring me joy. Those are things that are a big part of who Estella is. Those are just some examples of like before, but like even asking myself what brings me joy now. Like if I look at my day-to-day routine, my schedule, what are the things that really like light me up? What are those things that when like I do it, it's like my brain shuts off? Again, acting, that's an example. Or when I'm like singing, and this doesn't even have to be like me putting on a performance like 8-year-old Stella. I mean, shit, I do. I act like there's an audience, but I could be in my apartment. Like an example for me is Saturday morning when I get to sleep in, I wake up, I either cook or clean my apartment, and I blast music and I'm singing. That is core to Estella. And so those are just small examples, but like I think in trying to again remedy who you are at your core innately and who you're becoming / who you are now, I think those are things that are important to think about. And also just when you're thinking back at your life, like not just when you're younger, but just generally like throughout your life, what are like key activities, hobbies, what are key places, like moments in your life that you feel, who would Estella be? Obviously I'm using me as an example, but like who would I be without this thing? Now babes, let's not go too deep into the rabbit hole and focus too much about like the trauma, right? Like obviously those are things that have affected us all, right? There's positive and very traumatic experiences that shape our identity, but this is more so focused on like the more positive things that do, because like you're bigger than your traumas. Like obviously they still affect you, but y'all know what a trauma is. I'm not gonna throw something out there, but like when I'm thinking about who is Estella, even though we operate like that in the world, right? Like I may operate like that sometimes, where I have a hard time distinguishing like what happened to me versus who I am. But generally, like when I am thinking about like Estella, I'm not gonna think like, oh, you know, that accident that I was in this year, like that affected me. But I think about my passions. I think about things that light me up. And so what are core memories in your life? And like, what about those memories really speak to like the person that you are, you know, today? And in addition, it's like, what about that resonates with you now versus like, what do you feel like you're less attracted to, like you're more distant from now, not just circumstantially, but you don't even really miss it. Does that make sense? Because I think that that also can be very telling. Like just because you once related to something so much, or you felt very compelled towards doing something before, or even for a long time, that does not mean that that's something that has to mean something to you anymore, or has to be so closely tied to your identity anymore. Because that gets to like my overall point, which is like we're constantly defining and redefining ourselves. Like it's okay that you spent most of your life playing football and now you don't, you know, because that's not something that you feel called to do anymore. So giving yourself a kind of like the space to like acknowledge those two things, acknowledge that something could have meant something to you before and it doesn't really anymore, intentionally, not because of circumstances, but because you just don't care for it anymore. I think something that could be helpful in thinking about who you are and like trying to like be in tune with that again is like, what do people know you by? I want to say that with a caveat, which is you don't need to just limit your identity to that, right? And people can know you by something that you've never really felt was a part of your identity, right? I'm trying to think of an example. At its basis, what I'm saying is this is not supposed to be a limiting thing. I feel like something that people used to know me as, I feel like since I was in middle school, honestly, like a lot of people, they really, I don't want to say knew me by it, but like something that they would always comment on, limited capacity, but like to some degree, like me experimenting with my makeup, or like me and my fashion taste. Like those are things that people would make comments about. That was something that I constantly got comments about. And then going to college, hearing comments about just like me being a creator, or oh, like is he being a YouTuber, and like, you know what I'm saying? Like there's certain things that I've heard various times where it speaks to my identity. It's not limited to that, but like me personally, that is something that I would say resonates with actually who I define myself to be and what I value. Again, whether it be in the context of content creation, in the context of influencing, or whether it just be me enjoying different aspects of beauty, self-expression through things like, again, makeup, fashion, like that to me speaks to my identity. And so I think thinking about that can be helpful sometimes, where it's like, who is this? What have people known me by? What are people associated with me? Like when people reach out to me, this is also a good one. What is something that they would value advice in, like specific to me, just to get yourself thinking, you know? And again, you can also still think about further what resonates with me, what doesn't. What did always resonate with me, what never did. What did resonate with me before, what doesn't now. And what always has resonated with me and still does. I think once you actually think about all of those things, and you have a better sense of like who you are at your core, right? You have a good reminder of like, what is it that really speaks to my identity? And what are the things that really help me feel most like myself? And from there, you can then ask yourself, what is my relationship with this thing? What is my relationship with acting? What is my relationship with fashion? What is my relationship with storytelling? Do I feel distant from that? In what ways do I feel distant or out of touch from that? And then once you understand that relationship a little bit more, asking yourself what events and circumstances have distanced me from this thing, and how have they? And obviously, like this requires a lot of reflection, right? I will say that. But I think understanding really your progression, like how did you go from here to here? Again, and it's not linear. Not me dancing. That helps you then get a bigger picture of like, where am I at? What happened? How did that affect me for me to be where I'm at now? And like, how can I work through whatever did influence me, whatever did distance me from the things that make me feel most like me? I think just contextualizing is just always important, because you can't fully understand, in my opinion, right? Maybe some people can argue differently, but in my opinion, you cannot separate who you are from what has happened to you. Context is really important in working through these things, and like trying to figure out how you can move past them and move on, you know, and move forward. So again, for example, like for me, I think generally like think about things like that, you know, affect your mental health, because that usually does distance you from the things that make you feel most like you and like lighter, because a lot of times you don't really have much energy. Like it's hard to be passionate about anything when you're not really passionate about your life. And that is very frank, but I mean that when I say that. Yes, you, on the flip side, you can use the thing that you enjoy and that you feel like makes you most like you as an outlet, right? As an escape. But on the other end, you also could just not feel like dealing with anything because it's hard for you to wake up every day. And that's just life. So when you have like tragedies happening in your life, those are examples. So you understand like, hey, like, there's this tragedy that I went through at this point in time. I feel like afterwards I stopped making content. And so working through those feelings of what happened, how did that affect me? What were the beliefs? Everything's tied to each other, guys. What are the beliefs that I then began to develop because of this thing that happened? Maybe I'm not worthy. I am not capable. I'm powerless. Like, these are things that affect your ability to do the things that feel most like you sometimes. Like, your confidence is affected. You feel disempowered. Like, that can affect your energy when it comes to like seeking the things that make you feel like your optimal self. So working through that is like really important to figure out, okay, like this affected me in this way. So what beliefs do I have to unlearn, tweak in order to get myself to feel empowered, to feel like worthy of doing the things that I enjoy and that make me me? And then asking yourself, even within that, it's like, what is within my control to change, right? What circumstances in my life can I change to be able to do this thing more if I feel distant from it? Versus what maybe do I have less control in changing physically, circumstantially, but mentally I can work through. And maybe there are things that I can change mentally or adapt to in order to be able to do these things. Let me think of an example. Like, if I can't physically go to acting class anymore, I'm sorry I keep using that example, y'all. Like, that's probably the most relevant thing to me. But if I can't physically go to acting class anymore because I don't have a car or, you know, whatever that may be, how can I seek to exercise this thing that I'm so passionate about, even though the circumstances have changed that make me feel more distant from the thing that I'm passionate about, from the thing that I feel like is core to a cell's identity? Maybe it's still doing gigs. Maybe it's making sure that I am engaging with content that speaks to acting and like honing in on my own skills personally, even though I'm not in a classroom setting to learn this thing. Maybe it's still just applying for gigs on Backstage or finding other castings so that I'm still exercising that skill, even though it doesn't look like going to classes right now. Like, exercising that muscle does not look like learning it in a traditional setting. And again, I think a lot of it's just like mental and emotional work. Like, I think as long as you, and I've told you guys this before, but like, as long as you have like a desire, like an inner passion, just like you're compelled to do something, something's calling you, like that, you're meant to do that thing. Like, I firmly believe that, because no matter what happens, like, it's gonna be in you. No one can take that from you, you know? No situation, no circumstance. Like, things might be more difficult, there might be challenges, there are just gonna be hiccups, but like, there's ways to still, as long as you have that desire, make that a part of your life, you know? Like, I really want to preach that, because like, I've had my own journey with that. Trust me, like, it has not been easy, and I'm still not where I want to be when it comes to, like, again, leveling up in those things that I do feel like are central to who I am. But when there's a will, there's a way. And I really do mean that. So anyways, I would say like those are like the main buckets that I would like break it down in. Things to kind of just like think through, right? Like, to identify what are things that help me feel most like me. Who am I? Defining that. Who am I becoming? Making peace with that. Making room for that, and giving yourself grace in that. But I think once you're like asking yourself like all of these things, once you're able to define like, who am I at my core? Who have I always been? Who am I now? I think then you can start working towards stepping into that, basically. And I think things that help are like self-care, like, again, those hobbies that we were talking about, healing remedies like journaling. I mean, like I said, that like goes hand in hand with self-care, but I think mentally just like spending the time to reflect and like get to know yourself. And in addition to that, choosing intentional time of solitude to like discover and rediscover who you are with limited distractions and little noise. Because obviously I just gave you a bunch of prompts to think about all of these things, but like regularly just setting time aside to like sit with yourself and like be able to even identify like where are you at in your life, so you can move with intention. I think it's really important in rediscovering yourself and in going back to yourself. And lastly, I think what's really important is not just like leaning into solitude, but also like leaning into community. Like, who can you reconnect with that makes you feel most like yourself? I think sometimes placing yourself in that environment can be really helpful in just like reigniting who you are. And I know you know what I mean. Like, there's certain people in your life where like when you're around them, you're like, without even having to try, it's like they bring that out of you. Like, you feel just so like free and open. That's you at your core, you know? And so I think making time to connect with people who do mentally allow you to let your guard down and feel in tune with who you are at your core, like that's very important. And also just like connecting with people who maybe are newer connections but still have that same effect on you. All to say, life is not easy. It's not. It has its ups and downs. We all know this. Like, it will keep throwing curveballs at you. But the only thing that we can really control is like our own journey, like our own mental and emotional journey in terms of intentions. Like, who do we want to be? Like, what do we value? Holding that close to us, I think, is really important in staying grounded, despite the fact that there's so much change in your life. And despite the fact that a lot of things feel very chaotic. Like, what you can focus on is making sure that everything's at bay with you internally. And so checking in with yourself and like, again, making sure that you are setting yourself up so that you feel most like you're doing the things that make you feel most authentically yourself is very important in living a peaceful life. Like, it's essentially what I'm trying to get at. Because I truly believe if you are living authentically and like you feel most like yourself, very little will shake you, despite how crazy it gets. So that being said, I hope this was really helpful for you guys. Like, I know I threw a lot of different like concepts out there. Let me know if you have any questions or comments. Let me know if you have any like thoughts or if anything came up for you. But yeah, y'all, I hope you guys enjoyed this video and I hope you're staying warm and safe in this crazy world. Thanks for watching. Like, comment, subscribe if you like this video, and I'll catch you guys next time.
Like that, I might as well get on with it and move on to the next. But if we're being real, that's just not my style.